Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. You know, the patriotic Vermonters who volunteered to serve in the Union Army included the young man pictured here, David Andrew Clough, a boy born and raised on the family farm in Albany, Vermont, a community tucked up in the northeastern corner of the state, not far from the Canadian border. He lived there with his parents, David and Eleanor, and younger sisters, Christine and Jane. When the war began in 1861, 17-year-old Clough was too young to join the army. Plenty of other teenagers enlisted across the Union and the Confederacy, but not Clough. We don't exactly know why he didn't enlist. Perhaps his parents refused to give him their permission to join, or maybe young Clough tried and was denied by a recruiting officer, maybe sent back home to try again later. Whatever the reason, doesn't really matter, because in 1862, a year later, now 18-year-old Clough did enlist. In early September of that year, as General Robert E. Lee and his Army of Northern Virginia headed northward on what would be the first invasion of the United States. This is the one that ended at Antietam. Clough enrolled as a musician in Company I of the 15th Vermont Infantry for a 9-month term of enlistment. Then, the following month in October, he formally mustered into the regiment, again as a musician. According to one report, young Clough became much esteemed for his musical abilities, and he transferred to Company D as a fifer. I don't have to tell you, students of the Civil War, just how important fifers and drummers were to the Army. They kept the rank and file organized in the heat of battle and on the drill field. They were indispensable to infantry regiments. Clough and his comrades traveled to Washington, D.C. for duty in the capital city's defenses along the Arlington line in Virginia. In 1863, as General Lee's Confederates attempted a second northern invasion, this time getting into Pennsylvania, the 15th Vermont received orders to march towards Gettysburg. On July 1st, as the battle raged in fields and woods around the town and then in the town itself, the Vermonters were detached to guard supply trains and missed the fighting. However, they were brought in to pursue Lee's army after they were defeated. Soon after, Clough and the rest of the regiment headed home. The conclusion of their 9-month service was just about to happen. But by this time, young Clough suffered from typhoid fever. So sick he was that his captain, Charles French, gave up his horse to the sickly young fifer rather than leave him behind in a hospital somewhere in the South or maybe Washington, D.C. Clough stayed on that horse and other means of transportation and made the journey back to Brattleboro, Vermont. But his outlook was bleak. His parents were permitted to visit him in a hospital, and they were with him. They soothed him during what turned out to be his dying hours. Clough succumbed to typhoid on August 6th, 1863, at the very end of his term of enlistment. His grief-stricken parents transported his remains home to the family cemetery and buried him there. Surviving among his personal effects are this portrait and a newspaper clipping. The clipping comes from a newspaper or some other periodical, and it's titled "The Flight of Time." It's a reflection on the brevity of life, and it's especially poignant to be found in the personal effects of a boy soldier, a fifer, who did not live to see his 20th year. Let me read it to you. So here we go. The flight of time. Swiftly glide our years. They follow each other like the waves of the ocean. Memory calls up the persons we once knew, the scenes in which we once were actors. They appear before the mind like the phantoms of a night vision. Behold the boy rejoicing in the gaiety of his soul. The wheels of time cannot roll too rapidly for him. The light of hope dances in his eye. The smile of expectation plays upon his lip. He looks forward to long years of joy to come. His spirit burns within him when he hears of great men and mighty deeds. He wants to be a man. He longs to mount the hill of ambition, to tread the path of honor, to hear the shout of applause. Look at him again. He is now in the meridian of his life. Care has stamped wrinkles upon his brow. Disappointment has dimmed the luster of his eye. Sorrow has thrown its gloom upon his countenance. He looks back upon the waking dreams of his youth and sighs for their futility. Each revolving year seems to diminish something from his little stock of happiness, and he discovers that the season of youth, when the pulse of anticipation beats high, is the only season of enjoyment. Who is he of the aged locks? His form is bent and totters. His footsteps move more rapidly towards the tomb. He looks back upon the past. His days appear to have been few, and he confesses that they were evil. The magnificence of the great is to him vanity, the hilarity of youth, folly. He considers how soon the gloom of death must overtake the one and disappointment and the other. The world presents little to attract and nothing to delight him. Still, however, he would lengthen out his days, though of beauty's bloom, of fancy's flash, of music's breath, he is forced to exclaim, I have no pleasure in them. A few years of infirmity, insanity, and pain must consign him to idiocy or the grave. Yet this was the gay, the generous, the high-souled boy who beheld his ascending path of life, strewed with flowers without a thorn. Such is human life, but cannot be the ultimate destinies of man. A powerful and poignant clipping to be found in the personal effects of the boy who would only live to see and enjoy those early years of folly and youth. I researched this reflection and found that it draws from the ancient Roman poet Horace's Carpe Diem theme, which portrays life and time as swiftly passing. It also echoes biblical references, including Psalm 90, which emphasizes the brevity of life. Quote, for all our days pass away under your wrath, we finish our years like a sigh. End quote. I also found in newspapers.com, The Flight of Time first appeared in the October 20th, 1827 issue of a publication called The Farmers and Mechanics Journal of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It was reprinted occasionally in various newspapers across the country over the next few decades, but not often. It's fair to state that this is an obscure text with minimal circulation. How did it become part of Clough's belongings, an artifact in his small amount of remaining items to mark his life? I don't know. There's no evidence, there's no information to tell us why. It also begs the question of what is his wish to grow old? Did he want to become old? Did he see life? Did he embrace life ahead of him? Well, you want to believe that, like all young folks, he did, but he never had the opportunity to find out as he gave his life for his country and the Constitution. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.